Hello, welcome. This is John's D&D vlog. I had some free time this Christmas vacation, and one of my groups recently finished the module. This one, actually. More or less, so I thought I'd make a new episode, right? As usual, as always, with these module reviews that I do, please, if you're a player, don't watch this because I'm going to be giving away stuff that'll make your experience less fun. So please don't watch this episode any further if you're a player. I'll be talking about the module G3. This is the Hall of the Fire Giant King. Anyway, this is, I believe it's the third module Gary Gygax wrote. Anyway, it's a beautiful module, and we were happy to go through it, although I think for us personally, it ended up being a little bit different than probably what Gary intended. So let's take a look. For my last episode on Gary Gygax, I bought a copy of this. It's his World of Greyhawk folio, right? So it just has a map and a listing, a book that lists some of the descriptions of what's in his world, right? I didn't actually know much about it because I don't use his world. I use my own. But now that I have the map and it's on my computer because I scanned everything in and cleaned it up some, I thought it might be nice to show you where Hall of the Fire Giant King and a few of the other modules actually happen on the map, right? So anyway, thanks to Jeff Bryant on the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Facebook group, I was directed to the following page. On it, it lists all the different locations, right? The hex data that you need in order to find a spot on the map of all the different modules that are in Greyhawk, right? I'll show you where the Hall of Fire Giant King is, but honestly speaking, I'm going to show you a few. Before I do that, though, I thought it might be helpful to show you how to read the map. You can get a copy of this off of DriveThruRPG, and it's not terribly expensive, right? The 1983 version is expensive. That's about $100, but if you get the 1980 version, I got mine for $30, and that seems reasonable to me, right? So this is Greyhawk. Welcome to it. Anyway, I'm going to teach you how to read the map now. One thing you're going to find is that in order to read the Greyhawk map, you're going to need a couple of rulers, right? So we've got this one vertical here, and we've got this one diagonal here. That's how Gary did it, right? He's got these numbers that, there's a number here, but it doesn't refer to a number going straight across. It refers to a number going straight down diagonally like this. If we look at the corner, we can better understand it, right? So, as you can see, here's a 170, 170, 169, 169. So you take this ruler and you stretch it between those two, right? And then that's how you find one of the points, right? But then you also use this vertical line and you zoom in on the horizontal portion of the location information, right? So, for example, right, let's find the Hall of the Fire Giant King. It's going to be at M5 138, right? So first let's find M5. So M5 is way over here. And then let's go check out 138, right? So where's 138? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it over 138 right here, right? So that means where these two lines cross, that's where we're going to find the Hall of the Fire Giant King. Let's back out just a little bit, right? So where those two things cross, that's where the Hall of the Fire Giant King occurs, right? So anyway, that's how you read the map. That's how you find different locations. Before I continue, here's a list of those locations of all those different modules on the Greyhawk map. I just thought this list was easier to read. So I thought before I went into the module, I should even go into like giant personalities and such so that we can understand better what we're dealing with, right? So these are the 7 different variations of giant. I mean, you could also include bugbears and ogres if you want to, but I'm just going to focus on these 7 because these are the ones that are the main stars of the modules, right? But anyway, what you're going to find is that when I read the 2nd edition monster manual, right, each one of these different types of giant had its own distinct personality. So, like the hill giants are kind of like cavemen, really dumb, very dumb, and not much as far as organization or government goes. It's just a bunch of animals living together, right? And then from up here, as you go up, the the type of government that they have is more and more and more organized, right? So these guys sounded more like the American Indians, and honestly speaking, the Stone Giants didn't even sound like they were that bad of people, right? But anyway, Frost Giants, I summed it up as tiny tyrants. You do what you want to do, but when it comes here to the Fire Giants, I mean, you're actually talking military, right? And intelligence actually increases as you go up the line as well. So these guys are very dumb, and these guys are super intelligent, right? So the Fire Giants, they're military, so they're extremely organized, and they're not as stupid as the Hill Giants. So when it comes to playing these guys, you have to realize that it's military. They're all very devoted to their organization and to their government, and it's military. So there's probably some who are actually very willing to die for their country, right? So just keep that in mind as you play this. Unlike the Hill Giants, right, you're more inclined to find these guys using traps, and you're probably going to find these guys more inclined towards using magic. So in studying the Hill Giant Chief and Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, there wasn't much magic. These guys actually do have access to some magic, but it's going to hurt them in order to use it. And because it's military, there is enough devotion there where somebody might actually be willing to go for it. I'll explain what I mean later on.
So let's look at the guide. If you want to download it, the info on how to do that is in the text below this video. Please look there for more info.
It's just got the basic stuff, Thaco lists, my own personal advice, which you can ignore as you see fit. There's a ancient red dragon in here, and if you keep it the first edition type, it's going to be really too easy to kill, so I put it in a second edition. So anyway, here's the stats for it. There's some magic items in this module that you're just not going to find in any of the other books anywhere. So these are my personal guesses at what the XP and GP values of them should be. Change them as you see fit. So anyway, I always redraw the maps. It's nice to know what's in each area before the players actually get there, and I don't have a great memory, so that's why I put all these notes in here. I think it's really helpful. It's really handy when you're actually running the game to know what's going on all around an area and not just what's in the area. Also, I include these maps that don't have anything written on them so that you could like scan them in and use them on Roll20. And last thing, XP lists and treasure lists, right, for each room, each encounter. It's handy. There's a lot of magic items in this adventure, so good luck. Have fun.
So I have a bit of a problem. Usually from here I just go through the module and explain the hard parts that were in it, and I can't really do that this time. Our group went through this module in such a strange way that my own advice probably won't apply to you, like at all, right? We had a lot of fun, but it ended up being really weird for us, right? I try my best to run a sandbox campaign. Sandbox meaning that the players, you can go and do anything you want to do and go anywhere you want to go, right? To do this, though, as a DM, you have to really be prepared, and you have to prepare. But even then, after you're done preparing, you're not done, because these guys can think up things you've never even thought of before. So you have to get really good at either finding new information fast or creating information on the fly, right? So I had to do that a lot with this campaign, with this particular module. I'm just going to explain to you what happened to us, and then you'll be able to better understand a little bit, anyway, about sandbox campaigns, right? So in G1, this is where our G3 experience started, right? In G1, I wanted to do some foreshadowing. So somewhere in one of the treasures in G1, I put a note that was signed by the big boss of G3, a Clavdra, right? And it was an order, kill those guys, right? So I just wanted them to kind of have a heads up for what was going to happen. I wanted to give them a piece of the puzzle, a Clavdra, right? But surprising to me, they decided to make a wish, and the wish was that they wanted to be standing in front of a Clavdra. So all of a sudden, out of the blue, I had to jump all the way from G1 to G3. But the thing is, if you're going to go in front of a Clavdra, what does that mean? I mean, is it instant death? Because she's a really big, bad person who's in charge of a lot of big, bad people, right? So I needed some way to find out whether or not she was going to be prepared for the party and ready to fight or not, right? So I rolled percentage dice. In my campaign, big is bad, right? So if I had rolled 100, it would mean she was completely armed, ready for the fight, surrounded by her guards, surrounded by fire giants. But that's not what happened. Instead, the group rolled a 1. The luckiest of the lucky rolls, right? In my campaign, anyway. So I had it so she was asleep. Before even thinking about it, the paladin of the group, she could sense that she was evil, right? So they killed her on the spot. And that was like, they took out the big bad of the module 2 stories down from the one they were currently in, right? From there, they just started checking out that whole area, and what they found was that there was a whole bunch of prisoners close to them, so they freed all the prisoners. Before they even got into any fights with anybody, they freed the prisoners, right? So what a weird way to begin G3, by going to the end first, right? So anyway, some of the prisoners were from a city that was close by to the Fire Giant stronghold, right? So they brought those guys back to another city called Briarwood, right? Which is the City-State of the Invincible Overlord 1987 edition. And there they met the wizard Crandall. And Crandall announced to the party that their city had also been attacked by giants. And they were very surprised to find out that within the giants that had attacked this place, the majority had been frost giants, right? So my group received a promise from the king through Crandall that they would get 50,000 gold pieces if they brought back the head of the frost giant king, right? So from there on, my group decided to go back and finish G1 and then proceed on to G2, right? And then when they finished G2 and they had the head of the frost giant Jarl, right? They went into that one teleporting room and they accidentally ended up in G3. They didn't know they were going to go there. So instead of going back to Briarwood, they decided to investigate a little bit. So they put the head of the frost giant Jarl down and they started investigating at the gates. They got them open. And when they got them open, all of a sudden they were attacked by this big, huge onslaught of fire giants. And one guy, I just said that he had a big head, but they hit him with lightning bolt after lightning bolt after lightning bolt, and nothing fazed him. They just had to get out of there in a hurry, and they accidentally left the head of the frost giant Jarl in front of the gates after attacking. So I think I need to sum up what's going on here. This is how they chose to start G3, right? First they go and they kill the big boss, and then they free all the prisoners, and then they leave that Jarl's head sitting there in front of the main gates after they've tried to do a frontal assault on the place, right? Can you think of a more brazen, a braver way to pick a fight with the Fire Giant King? No stealth, no nothing, just a straight up assault after having killed the boss. So anyway, the Fire Giants began to prepare. They set a 24-hour watch around the teleport landing pad. They also dug a pit under the pad and filled it with spikes, and then they also filled the bottom of the pit with green slime. And the trap eventually worked. My players looked really scared, so I had Crandall offer to accompany them back. They did nothing to check out their location before they teleported there, though, and when they teleported back, they landed right in the pit on the spikes, and then they had green slime all over them, right? So, they also took a lot of damage from giants throwing rocks at them. Somehow nobody died, right? But Crandall was the one who saved them. He teleported them back to Briarwood and then cast Burning Hands and basically spent the next few minutes just torching all the green slime off of their legs. It was a pretty horrific thing to describe. I'm not going to do it here, but you can imagine, right? After that, Crandall left the group. These guys were just far too bush league for him. So, bravely, they chose to go back. They didn't go back into the front, though. When they first wished their way in, back in G1, wisely they chose to memorize a teleport location on the second level there. So, that's where they went back to. They had some fights, but it was really hard for them. And in time, a new problem showed up. They were just walking through one of the hallways, and all of a sudden, Otis, Turjon, and one of their previous group members found them and told them that Crandall had warned them to return with them to Briarwood immediately. So there's a problem, though. Otis and Turjon were NPCs that they had played with about a year ago when I was running them through T1 to 4, Temple of Elemental Evil. They hadn't seen these guys in a year, so this was weird. So they immediately decided that it was some sort of illusion, and instead they ran back to their home in Eastbrook, right? Eastbrook is a city from my novel Asmarine. They realized that some sort of an illusion was happening, and they wanted to confirm that Otis and Turjon were safe. What they found, though, instead, was pretty upsetting. Their neighbor, Jeff Brooks, and the Cookie Stone store owner had both been kidnapped. So who's Jeff Brooks? My novel Asmarine is about a new religion that has come to the city of Eastbrook, Every new member of it has to denounce their previous faith, but in return they get a superpower. Jeff, when he joined, received the ability to learn and teach anything instantly by touch. So now he spends his days finding excuses to shake hands with everyone he can, right? He's now the equivalent of a 30th level wizard. He's an extremely self-centered 14-year-old boy, but he has managed to develop some sort of a relationship with my PCs. They've gotten some information from him, but for the most part, he's just scary, creepy, and kind of annoying. And the Cookie Stone store, right? I've talked about this in previous episodes. Here's the rules. The biggest problem, though, is that because the Cookie Stone store owner is missing, there's no way to get new Cookie Stone. So if these guys die, they're dead. So they started getting really nervous, right? For the record, the store owner's name was Brett Gold. So no more Cookie Stones, right? Cookie Stones are a good way to keep players playing, as long as our Cookie Stones dying becomes a much smaller problem and I can play Gary's modules the way he intended, you know, nastily, right? But when the Cookie Stones are gone, all of a sudden stuff gets really serious. It became a very emotional experience immediately, and that's kind of the goal of the game, right? Nonetheless, my players started casting divination spells a lot. When the Cookie Stone store owner was kidnapped, one attacker was killed. It was a mind flayer, so the PCs went to the prison where the mind flayer's corpse was kept and began questioning it, using Speak with Dead, you know, over and over and over again. Anyway, during the questioning, the mind flayer gave up the location of the Elder Brain for his tribe. He stated that it was in the Anti-Solar Institute in Erelhai Sinlu. Erelhai Sinlu is the city featured in the module D3, Vault of the Drow, right? And if you want to read up on the Anti-Solar Institute, check out Dragon Magazine, issue 298. They had tried to get info from their deity over and over again, and I thought they needed a push, so the next time they cast it, I had an angel arrive in person to speak to them. Her name was Chantel. She looks like a 6-year-old girl, but she speaks like she's 50, right? She brought them back to her plane, St. Cuthbert's plane. I had to look it up. It's in Arcadia, right? So she brought them there to a cafeteria where she worked at in the House of Records, right? St. Cuthbert's House of Records. Cafeteria was huge. It sat about 1,000, and all throughout this cafeteria you saw nothing but kids age 4 to 7, right? And each and every one of them had this big, huge two-handed sword strapped around their waist. Nobody there was big enough to wield it, but they all had one, right? So anyway, while eating, Chantel explained that there was a problem that until recently had only occurred very rarely, right? They couldn't locate Jeff Brooks or Brett Gold. Usually when something like this happens, it's because of a sphere of annihilation, but in this particular instance, there wasn't one, and they don't know what happened to those two guys. Usually, you can either locate a body or you can locate a soul, right? But in this particular instance, it's like they completely disappeared. And also recently, 6 others also disappeared in the same similar manner, right? The Cloud Giant King and Queen, the Storm Giant King and Queen, and the Titan King and Queen. So Chantal, after their lunch, offered to join the group to help the group go find what happened to these 8 people, right? So they went back to G3 and began fighting. Chantal placed a bracelet onto her wrist and began to glow brightly. She then slapped the side of her sword, and her sword jumped into her hands. From that point on, Chantal began to fight, something like Yoda in Star Wars 2. But in this instance, Chantal was merely holding onto the sword and was being dragged around behind it, like she was water skiing. The sword was what was doing all the fighting. All she had to do was to just hold on. Each time she was hit, the glow from her bracelet absorbed the damage, but slowly, as her shield wore down, she began to glow less and less. As one fight ended, the thief chose to put on his ring of invisibility to investigate down one particular hallway, only to meet up with the ancient red dragon Brazimal, right? Brazimal sees invisible creatures very well. After the thief died, one of the PCs reached around in his bag for a potion of red dragon control that they had gotten over a year previous from T1 to 4, the Temple of Elemental Evil. First edition dragons don't have magic resistance, but second edition dragons do. I calculated that Brazimal's magic resistance was 65%, but in the instance of a potion of red dragon control, I ruled that the magic resistance of the dragon was made null. So Brazimal began to fight for the party, because he only rolled a 1 on his saving throw. One mistake I made was that the dragon should have cast protection from normal missiles on himself. That would have protected him somewhat from the giant's rocks. Nevertheless, it was a pretty spectacular fight, with Chantal spinning around the room like Yoda and a huge ancient red dragon clawing and biting against the giants. When the dragon died, the party escaped to rest and regain hit points, right?
They were making good progress against the fire giants. After a night's rest, they were getting ready to return to the fight. What the party didn't know, though, was that the mind flayers and other spellcasters in the module had all, for some reason they were unaware of, fled. There were no spellcasters there to help out the giants, and the giants were scared, right? The king was preparing to evacuate his keep. All of his remaining forces were gathered into one spot, and were going to go down to his escape route, right? This was when about 20 of the giants broke off from the rest of the group. They didn't want to give up and were fanatically loyal to the king. So they all went to room 11, or on the second level, and began using the altar there to create magic items to help them fight against the invaders. Every time they had done this, though, one of the giants had been destroyed, vaporized, turned into nothingness by the elder elemental god. They were trading warriors for weapons. After several uses of the altar, the giants now had several helpful magic items. It was at this point that the party of adventurers returned to the keep. They discovered the giants in the altar room and attacked. They were surprised to see the magic weapons in their hands, one of which was a wand of fireballs, right? The party managed to survive against them, but they had taken a lot of damage, so they fled. They returned to G1 to hide in the caves nearby. When King Snur, though, saw the carnage and realized that his group was not safe even in retreat, he commanded other giants to sacrifice themselves, and they began to create more magic items. Eventually, a ring of teleportation and a ring of wishes were created. The first wish was to know the location of the group. The giants then teleported to G1 and began to fight against the group, who were now very low on hit points and spell points, right? At first, only 6 giants arrived, but each round thereafter, more giants arrived. King Snur was making more magic items as quickly as he could. Eventually, the group grabbed the teleportation chain that they first found in G1 and used it to flee to G2. Not long after that, though, several rounds later, all of the remaining giants arrived in the corridors in G2 alongside them. King Snur had given up and simply used his last remaining wish to say the following: "I wish that I and my subjects would be wherever our attackers were for the next 24 hours. So from this point on, there was no way for the party to escape. They had almost no spell points left. There was no way for the party to teleport away, even if they had wished to. That was when the paladin of the group asked Chantel to bring their group back to Arcadia. So she did. They plane shifted, right? She teleported the group back to the cafeteria in St. Cuthbert's Hall of Records. We didn't know what time of day it was there, so I had the party roll for it. 1d6 to see if it was AM or PM, then 1d12 to see what hour, right? And they eventually rolled that it was 4 p.m. It was too early for dinner, but I did state that a group of 30 angels were there in the cafeteria, listening to some kind of bureaucratic training meeting. Several seconds after the group arrived, all the fire giants arrived as well. The 30 angels quickly put on their bracelets and slapped their swords as the group jumped into their Darren's instant fortress. The fight was over not long thereafter. So anyway, I didn't originally intend for this episode to be about sandbox campaigns, but when I looked and saw everything that I had to do to run G3, it ended up being a pretty good example of one, because I had to be ready at any time to jump anywhere in the known multi-dimensional universe, right? So these are all the books that I ended up needing just to run G3. You don't need to have all of this stuff, but if you're not going to have this stuff, you do need to know at the very least, like, what the story's going to be like several stories down the line, and you need to know, like, several cities, have enough information on them so that your players can run through them. You also need to know some stuff about other dimensions. The thing I like about the Manual of the Planes is that it's got all that information there. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. But if you don't want to use it, you certainly don't have to. But on the other hand, you have to invent all that stuff. So just be prepared. I ended up needing a lot of resources to run it right. So a few more words of advice and then I'm done. This one was kind of hard this time. Giants have strength, therefore they have huge strength bonuses, but they can't be applied to missiles, right? Gary Gygax designed it that way because if you start adding strength bonuses to missiles, it imbalances the game. Here's the trade-off. During melee, only a certain number of creatures can attack you, but when you're doing missiles, any number of creatures can attack you, right? So look at page 69 for more information on this. And then starting with G3, you're going to have to start thinking about magic resistance a lot. Your wizards are going to become far less powerful because all of your opponents, all of the big tough guys out there are going to have magic resistance. So you're going to have to keep track of that really well. Also, from here on out, starting with D1 all the way to the end, you're going to have to learn how to DM differently. You're going to have to learn how to attack your players in very, very different ways. The Drow, they're going to be very good at stealth attacks. They're going to be very good at coordinated stuff. I mean, from here on out, all of your opponents are going to be intelligent. So keep that in mind. Your players shouldn't get to walk through the next 3 modules easily. The next 3 modules should be harder than what they've ever encountered so far. Just keep all that in mind. You're going to have to learn how to DM differently. So anyway, that's all I have to say about G3. I hope you enjoyed what I had to offer. It's a great module, but we ended up having such an odd experience with it. I don't know how much my advice will help you, but have a good time. I will see you in a couple of weeks or maybe a month. I'm not sure. It depends when I've got free time. Have a good day.